The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is losing a record number of its membership.
If there are any among this people who should ever apostatize, prepare your backs for a good whipping.
Travis Wingoodsell. So, we're going to make something up here from a news thing that I found. That my brother is expected to be reviewing and give a report to the First Presidency in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. But there was one particular news story that relates to this, about the BYU Idaho president speaking at the devotional this past week, on Tuesdays, I guess, in which he told them not to be racist. Mormons have to be told not to be racist? Okay. Well, that's a far cry from the real serious problem that was in the news in Rexburg about the Idaho kids. They're having sex in churches rather than having sex in the temple. And so, the particular article that my brother will botch bigly has to do with younger Mormons are highly devout in some ways, but less in others, study shows. Now this is poll data, and I give no credibility to poll data. It's all crap. They're leading questions, they're not factual statistics, they're opinions and beliefs, and they're, a way for people to lie and tell funny stories, and thus you can never count on them and trust them. Plus, it's a small sampling. Everybody was not polled on this. For example, he uses some stats about the X generation, which I think is me. I thought I was in between X and Boomer. Or the silent. Well, silent is the really old, I think. I don't know. That sort of erased the hippie generation. They're gone. Who makes this crap up? I mean, seriously. It should be the decade you were born in. So, anyway. It's some guy, RNS, and he claims to have done something previous, and this kind of thing, I'm concerned it's AI, and so it's all made up anyway. But he's referring to and linking to Pew findings and the cooperative election study data, and then, those are legitimate. You can fact check them on it. And so, last month he says he published a column arguing young adult Latter-day Saints. And in case you didn't know, the youth are going to be attacked on Sunday And then in February, there's planned a young adult devotional. And that may be also in response to this Pew data thing that came out that my brother already informed them of and botched it bigly, thinking that it has to do with racism rather than sexual infidelity. Promiscuity. I grew up with him. Dear God. He's been that way his whole life. So they're leaving the church in high numbers than in the past. Last month. And that, yeah. That also would explain why the church has focused on young adults and kids previously. But they gave up on the young adults last year because they thought Armageddon was going to happen, and it didn't. Crap. That's what I get for starting the video after checking out the church news. I have only myself to blame. The church news terrorist employee is not responsible whatsoever for cyber terrorizing me and freezing my camera. No, not at all. And because of the neglect of the leaders of the church, the Mormons feel neglected and leave. Okay, we're not loved, we're not wanted, we're out. My brother will never explain that to them correctly. Mormons are very needy. Plus, some other stuff that's been coming out that have been a little more legitimate from more legitimate sources shows that the younger generation are definitely into sexual deviance to the extreme, even though they claim they're normal and it's soft. Mormons get definitions screwed up all the time, not just with scriptures. And I just, dear God, as you get a church that's old school, that are from the near dead generation, who are completely out of touch. And even D. Todd Christofferson has his brothers that are sexual deviants. And you have high-profile Utahns that are going to prison for sexual deviance. All those in the field of psychology, in the courts, in the police, in the fire department, in the school systems, and parents. Yeah, there is clearly a disconnect from the church leadership if they're thinking that it's other than the mighty big elephant in the chapel. See, from my generation, for the next couple decades, those who left the church left because of the church teaching us to study. So we studied and we found out the church lied to us, and we're out. Others of us pursued studying and found out Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon are true, just not what the church said they were. Those are rare individual, nonetheless, hated by both groups. And so my brother, likewise, is not informing the prophets correctly. The prophets are clearly out of the loop. I don't even think the Strengthening Church Members Committee are accurately reporting to them about my videos. I keep warning, they don't listen. Consequences happen. And so, yeah, they're clearly in a bubble world, doing their own thing. But like I said, they're expecting Armageddon and it didn't happen. And so now the prophets seem to be lost. They don't care to lead anymore. There's no stand up, take charge action being taken. And it could be because they're near death. They're too tired to get up. They're unable to get up. Their heads drooping. They're dozing in and out, unaware of their surroundings. And so that also causes a problem for church leadership upon the members of the church, who, when you give people agency, they abuse it. And I think that's what you're witnessing. We'd have to do more study and in-depth research. But there's some basic facts that are well established that have consequences as a result. And when you see those particular consequences, you are getting a confirmation from the test you ran. And so the specific details are individually based, but the generalized ones are what I'm observing here. That the church practices sexual abuse, and the Mormons emulate it, not realizing that it's sexual abuse or that it's criminal. Take prostitution, for example. In this morning's video, I put in the Fox 13 news clip about the sexual deviance in Utah. There are more massage parlors for happy endings than there are McDonald's with a Happy Meal. There are more happy endings in Utah than there are Happy Meals. I don't even think they do Happy Meals. I think they got sued for a Happy Meal. They had to shut it down. I don't know. I don't go to McDonald's. They screw you over on condiments. We'll make so much money screwing over our customers. We already have billions served. I'm just horrified of Wendy taking over Wendy's, and now it's closing down. Dave Thomas was the man back in the 80s and 70s even. He did a guest star appearance on The Bionic Man, or The $6 Million Man. Because when Colonel Steve Austin broke down the doors to rescue the group that had been kidnapped and was being held hostage, he says, "Hey, Dave." "Hey, Steve." "Yes, that's Dave Thomas. Oh my God." The joys of being a little kid. And then the Bigfoot episode, and then the very slow-moving robotic car. How is that a threat? We've spent a 2-hour episode. Most of it is showing the slowly moving robot and the scary music. When is the bionic woman going to make an appearance? Priorities, people. And so this also comes in part, remembering my childhood, that even though they taught us to study, they didn't teach us the basics of the church. Which I think I probably put it back up here. Yeah. About explaining our religion. They say we're Christian. Christians say, oh, hell no. And the church won't explain it. So we go out on missions. Yeah, we're Christians. See, it's in the center of the name. And they go, no, you're not. You have a Book of Mormon. You have temples. You have a prophet. Those are not Christian. And Mormons are clueless. They don't understand how that's not Christian. And so then the theology. Yeah, we're still not Christian. Heavenly Father is homuzion, plus having a body of flesh and bones as tangible as man, separate and distinct from his son, whom he raped his daughter in the Roman period time, who was only 14 years of age, to produce rape baby Jesus, of incest. And everybody's clueless as to why Brian David Mitchell kidnapped and raped a 14-year-old Mormon girl. Because you don't want to blame the church's false teachings for it? See, this kind of disconnect is what is not being portrayed in these stats as to why Mormons are leaving. You also need to understand that the younger generation, Generation Z, I guess, we're on to the next generation, that they are fully embraced, on TikTok. That they get all of their information and education and news from TikTok. So Israel is the new Nazi Germany, trying to do a Holocaust on the Gazans. And all about AI and just stuff that's just completely made up, and they believe it, and they spread it around until it becomes the truth that everybody's talking about, that has no basis in reality. These are the kinds of things that the Gen Z movement are involved with. They are not living in reality. They are completely clueless. And so for them, Mormonism is based on this non-reality existence. They form the church in their own image, what they want it to be. And they don't care what the rest of the world says on TikTok, because they were born and raised Mormon. We don't do that. We don't practice polygamy. My parents are wicked and not following President Russell Marion Nelson with a change in the temple to the law of chastity in 2019. So we don't practice polygamy. We're not racist. Ooh, Andromeda. Oh. Becca made a comment about the Magog. That if it was a black man, oh, script writer, what the hell? But you have these privileged white Mormons growing up in the Valley of Utah still isolated from the rest of the world, only getting information from TikTok as long as AI hasn't shut it down for the day. Or banned in Utah. No kids can use cell phones anymore. No adults either. You've got to prove you're an adult. You have my ID and all my personal information. You don't need this. You're getting a blacklist for the church to punish us. We're adults. We have constitutional rights still. And we're being stripped of them. And so, yeah, you get Mormons who think that they're privileged and chosen, and it gets worse with every generation. That also needs to be factored in. See, these are higher level stuff that my brother has no clue about. He just goes to Pew and plagiarizes it to give his report to the prophets. But the one thing, yes, just one, that determines why the prophets are so obsessed with why the youth are not getting married at a younger age is finance. That's it. Financial decision making is determining holding off getting married. Despite the horniness, they are well aware of the poor economy. And the church, they know, but they don't seriously consider it as they need to be. And so the church does all this other stuff, and it keeps failing on them, just like every priesthood project that came out. They all failed. Another program. This won't last long. And so, some of the stats that aren't really stats, they're just poll opinions of the percentages. That's why they hide the actual numbers, on prices or Family Feud. Top 10 answers on the board. We surveyed 300 people. So they tell you in advance, 300 people. And so it makes it a little bit challenging because it depends on which 300 people they're talking to and how they think and feel about things from the answers. And so, yes, you can get the wild answer to be the number one when the obvious one is not even on there and you got a strike and everybody's mad at you now. That's another reason why poll data sucks. And so this is generational continuity in U.S. LDS religiosity. Those who attend church, those who are active, come on. put in big words to try to confuse people and make them think that this is professionally done and accurate. God. Attend church at least weekly. Oh, gee, that's convenient because church is weekly. And so the numbers are high. For the most part, they're actually low. They're high priest home teaching numbers from back in the day. If you were to say how many elders didn't do their home teaching, yeah, those would be accurate. But those are straight stats. We know the numbers. We know the elders who didn't do their home teaching. And all that is done away with the ministering program. And so the Gen X, my generation, I guess, it doesn't have a coding for the age for which, because I'm not a boomer. That's my parents. I know that much. So I'm assuming I'm Gen X. And so the millennial would be the 2000s. And then Gen Z would be the 2020s. I don't know. Because that makes them 6 years old. So I guess it's when they turn teenagers or adults at 20. I need a key here, guys. You're assuming I know this crap. Instead, they should be putting those who were born in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. That would make more sense. And that would be a little more accurate. Because each generation of tens is brand new, and because there's a whole different cultural experience with each decade. There is some carryover, but the main decade is clearly defined, and for this isn't clearly defined. Hold a current temple recommend only the boomers. Everybody else is around the 50 percentile. And serve the mission low. That is interesting. The millennial generation were the highest there. So more of the younger kids are going out on missions so that they can see the world. Sister Oaks got busted. Dallin threw her under the bus. Yeah, she married you to see the world. She doesn't love you. She married you for status improvement. Like the mean women in the older singles ward picked on the other women when they started being friendly with certain rich guys who were for some reason not married. Generational decline. And pray daily. You're supposed to pray always. That was the first thing. You know, the church teaches us that the devil teaches a man not to pray. And I read the scripture from Scripture Mastery, pray always. And I'm going, okay, wait a minute. Pray always. And the church is saying that we need to close our eyes, bow our head, fold our arms, kneel, and then give a rote prayer, which we're told not to do rote prayers. And they claim that praying always doesn't mean always. It means whenever you start and end a particular event or activity. So, for example, a married couple about to have sex, you need to pray beforehand. And when you're done, you need to have a closing prayer. Where the guy, we've already been praying that we can have sex. Our prayers just got answered. And you want us to wait some more? And so, yeah, the boomer generation are the ones who pray daily and wear their underwear. So the majority of the youngers are below, in the low 40s and upper 30s for the millennials. And so the underwear, despite the bishops, that's right, they extended it to every 2 years to talk about renewing the garment, or the recommend, and thus reminding Mormons to wear the garments night and day in the temple recommend interviews. That's right. So that would suggest that this is a causation on the younger generation who are not constantly reminded to wear the underwear. Every 2 years. Yeah, interesting. See, these kinds of things you need to know of. And my brother, clueless. Reading scriptures daily. Yeah, it's all about spiritual witness feelings. I've been trying to tell you this as I study the scriptures in my videos with you. And clearly, the church has conquered Mormons to fully indoctrinate them. Only the boomers are at a low 39%. Gen Zs are 21%. Because that's how we teach investigators, and it shouldn't have been. You know, read, ponder, and pray about the Book of Mormon, and you're done. It's all true. So everything else is now true because you got a feeling about the Book of Mormon. So the church is true. Joseph Smith's literal histories are now true. Everything is true. You're done. You did it. Now keep paying your tithing until you're dead, and you're done. Good job. Prayer is high. Scriptures is low. Ta-da! Spiritual witness feelings strikes again. So, by not studying your scriptures and praying daily, you don't wear the underwear. Because you know they're true. So yes, by their fruits you will know if a precept is true or false. The precept of the church is spiritual witness feelings and is backfiring on the church, unless this is exactly what they want to do to destroy the church, which they were waiting for Armageddon and it didn't happen yet, so now they're sluggishly moving along. Let's see. So, view of sacrament meeting among, and they do a different charting thing here. What the hell? So, for Gen Zs, sacrament meeting is okay, but my mind tends to wander frequently. You have ADHD. You need to go see a psycho to give you drugs to shorten your lifespan and cause you to be on the Americans with Disabilities Act. Live off the dole that Trump is about to cancel. Dominating for Gen Zs. Yep, and that's the youth stats that came out about those who are mentally retarded in Utah. This seems to coincide here with that the youth are so brainwashed by psychologists and the spiritual witness feelings of the church that their minds literally wander, that they aren't able to handle this boomer church. They need a more TikTok-oriented church, and the church will not cater to that. I get frustrated with the public school systems for being so archaic, demanding that the status quo that has been established for millennia must continue, despite the change in the societal technology usage. Because, my generation was when people started en masse to utilize television. People, for the majority, were able to purchase a television in the 70s. And so everybody had the 3 channels to choose from: ABC, CBS, and NBC. Fox wouldn't come later until the late 80s with The Simpsons. And then I guess there was PBS for Sesame Street. And so everybody going to school talked about the same shows for the most part. V, the TV miniseries. Yeah, all of my peers were talking about that the next day and arguing over whether V stood for visitor or for victory. Or who shot JR. Everybody else was talking about that. I had my own shows. I wasn't going to cater to the pop culture, even though it was, for the most part I did, because that was the best. But then when you get into the internet and streaming nowadays, there's just so much. And now you have to see what people are being led to find popular. YouTube, for example, recommends what they want you to watch, what they deem as popular, rather than you choosing what you want to watch. And so in that particular case, those who conform and comply to being brainwashed on social media can then go to late night comedy, which is a still shared thing, because they've been way back into my parents' generation on the main 3, and understand what they're talking about. Whereas those of us who don't know what they're talking about. Because the late night picks and chooses what's good for their comedy and their majority of their viewers to cater to that. And so now we're starting to see a shattering of shared culture. My brother was clueless on any of that too. And so my generation struggled with, oh, you listen to country music and not heavy metal? We can't get married. We're not compatible. But opposites attract. Oh, I'm sorry, you're a blonde. I'm told I'm only supposed to choose brunettes because brunettes have more fun. Wait, no, blondes are supposed to have more fun. There's far more variety these days. And our generation started separating and not getting married with the little separation that was beginning to occur. And now with the greater separation of Mormons not getting married. Because finding a same person is impossible nowadays. It just can't be done. Not even within your own family. Your siblings are completely different than you. And what they learn, what they experience, what they choose to do and pursue in life. The opportunities are far greater these days, and the old school mindset is still being placed on them, and that's causing the later marriages in Mormonism, if not at all. And my brother is clueless and therefore isn't telling the church this, and they're clueless as to why this is all happening. The days of Kimball saying any two people can get married and make it work are gone. Mormons don't know how to do that. They don't know how to hook up with somebody, get married, and live together happily for the rest of their lives. It can't be done because of all of the differences. And it's not just the differences, but what you pursue in entertainment, in culture, in career, in life, have precepts behind them. And those precepts contradict and contend and clash with others. And you see that in our politics, which is mainly a false dichotomy, MAGA versus Antifa. But in society, with the varied cultures that we can acquire, even though they try to categorize the spectrums into the false dichotomies, the spectrums are very unique. And that's why psychologists thought that they were being clever by creating LGBTQIAPO+ and Canada 2S to be inclusive but exclusive of heterosexuals. And Epstein category is not in there either. Nonetheless, sex with Alexa and other things, yes. SNL has one on that, in case Idaho Chick is still listening now, or if she gave up on me. And so, very small percentage in all categories. I sometimes try to avoid sacrament meeting or do not make attending a high priority. That was the big category when I was younger. And so it looks like Nelson, by cutting out an hour of church, succeeded. Because now people go to sacrament meeting and then take off. That to go and make an appearance, to appear good and righteous, is quick and easy now. or easier. And so very few people don't bother with church anymore. Sacrament meeting is dull for me. Again, it's low, despite them not really allowing cell phones to record the hilarious testimonies, controversial scandals. But yeah, everybody, this has me going, I call BS. You're lying. Because prophets have come out with talks telling Mormons, you are to blame if you're not getting anything out of sacrament. And so you see that with the boomer generation. And even mine to some degree. But as you get to the younger generations who did not hear those talks, sure enough, they are not considering sacrament meeting uplifting. Their mind wanders. And so yes, this is something that I think we've caught on to here, is that clearly the teachings of spiritual witness feelings over science and facts is resulting in the problems of Mormons not knowing Mormonism. And that explains, depending on the age, I haven't checked the age forever, YouTube just completely botched my stats by deleting them all and starting all over again when they started the new AI program to silence my channel yet again. Is that the majority of people are boomers who watch my channel, and men, you know, those who work at the church office building. Women do not come to my channel. And it may be a result of this as well, that women are told, even back when I was a kid, that they're more spiritual than men, because they are closer to the Spirit and thus spiritual witness feelings through prayer. Women are natural. Yeah, I can see that. That because I'm not faith promoting in my titles and in my pictures for the thumbnails, women instantly go, oh, that's wrong, he's of the devil. And Max C, female, is upset. I can see YouTube. YouTube is more protective of the church these days. Not just in the comments of other people, but in my posting of videos. I get more tampering on my system when I'm not faith promoting. And when I'm appearing to be faith promoting, whoop, right through, approved. No problems here. You don't know me yet? It's always a trap. And so yes, this is very telling here, even though it's botched as a poll data. See, this is how I'm able to go to Heber C. Kimball's Masonry, and in the lies that he tells, I'm able to identify what the truth is. So, there you go. And I say these things in the name of Dan.